Tell me about a film that you watched recently that many people wouldn't know about, but it struck a chord with you.
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Something I've watched recently. Well, I rewatched. I mean, are old films okay with this?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Igmar Bergman?
Yeah, another Bergman film. Yeah, yeah, yes. Well, I watched Persona again recently, and I've seen the film many times. But I'm just astonished by how he's able to create this incredible sense of tension and foreboding, and this feeling that something is going to happen with just two people on an island.
Uh-huh.
It's so fundamental, so simple, and there's a sequence in it which involves a broken piece of glass.
Okay.
And the sequence is BB Anderson is waiting for Liv Ullmann has decided she's made a decision not to speak, and BB Anderson is her nurse. And the nurse, of course, they have this kind of relationship that is constantly sort of shifting. Who's in charge? Who has the power? And Liv Ullmann, this silent actress who's famous, and is being taken care of by this nurse on a remote island. You feel she's in charge. She has power. And this becomes something that is very upsetting to BB Anderson. She feels manipulated and used. And at one point, Liv Ullmann reads a letter that BB Anderson has written. And there's this kind of, I think it's a diary, and there's this kind of confessional feeling, and then Liv Ullmann has written about the nurse, and so the nurse feels very compromised, suddenly like she's being seen in a way and judged by this famous person. And there's a broken piece of glass, a glass breaks, and there's a broken piece of glass on the patio, and BB Anderson just sits there. It's a sunny day. She has a hat on, and she just watches as Liv Ullmann walks back and forth and almost hits the glass, and the tension you feel like, when is she going to step on this glass? And she steps on the glass and she finally makes a sound. She
Mm.
makes a sound, and suddenly the power starts to shift in this scene. So you watch something like that and you realize, well, okay, that's cinema. That's cinema.
Yeah.
That's cinema.
It's also difficult to write a scene with plenty of tension when there's not much going on. So it's easy when there's action or the threat of violence. Well, what I
That's
was
right.
about to say, it's a counterexample to what I was about to say, is that in Inglorious Bastards, the opening 10
Oh.
minutes or so, that's one of the most tense pieces of cinema or of film that I've ever seen. But there
Brilliant.
is the threat
Oh,
of violence,
absolutely.
though.
Well, Tarantino, of course, I mean, part of what I love so much about his filmmaking is he makes films within films, and they're very, very long sequences. He's willing to commit to a long sequence like that.
Yeah,
I mean, I
I
think it's
love
at least
that.
10 minutes, right? It's at
Yep.
least 10 minutes, maybe even more. But, you have the farmer there, and you've got his three daughters, and you begin to realize that there are people in the basement hiding, Jews that are hiding underneath the floorboards. And Christoph Waltz is just, the tension between the farmer and the hunter, Christoph Waltz, is so, you're absolutely right. The tension is so palpable and so somehow entranced. You can't look away. You
Yes.
don't want the scene to keep going, but you can't look away. And so that's, in fact, they're related. What happens in that scene and what happens in the scene in Persona are profoundly related. And that's something that, I mean, I think that, great artists are able to create this kind of trance in the audience where you are somehow, you're stuck in this narrative, inexorable movement of time. And that's something that, I mean, to me, the best cinema is cinema that gives you the experience of time, what time is actually sort of made of, human time anyway. And in a great film, you have the feeling. You look at, Seven Samurai or something like that. It's a long film, 3.5 hours, nearly 4 hours. But when you finish watching it, you feel like you've lived months with these people, and you come out and you say, how did that happen? How did Kurosawa do that? How did he
Yes.
give me the feeling, right, that I've lived for months, even though it's been 4 hours?
Yeah, it's much easier to do that in television, but it's extremely difficult to do that in film.
Well, I might I agree with you in a way, but I think that one of the things that's happened in television that's kind of it's both wonderful and also maybe sometimes a little deceptive is that it's true that long form television allows us to create, much more sort of nuanced relationships and to slow things down and to kind of have more of the cliffhangers and all those things, and they're wonderful. But then I also feel a lot of times things are extended artificially, and it's manipulative. It's manipulative in a way that actually is like it almost becomes like real time. So you're just kind of waiting for it to happen. Whereas I feel in a great film, it does something else, which is, and I think this is very important, which is that a cinema, the theater itself, and that's the thing that will never die. Mediums will change, but the cinema, the place we go to, which to me is a temple. It is a sacred space when we go to a cinema. Even the ones that are designed poorly. I mean, I'm an architect's son, so I like beautifully designed spaces, or things that I consider to be beautifully designed. But
Right.
but you go to the cinema and you're sitting there with other human beings, and we're collectively experiencing a dream. We're agreeing to collectively go through an experience together with people we don't know. Maybe you go with somebody but there are lots of people around you you don't know. And these collective experiences, that's like a fundamental, we're fundamentally touching our humanness when we're sitting in the dark watching dreams play out on a screen. That is something absolutely, there's something very, very deep about that. And I do think that part of what a great film does for you is that you feel you've gone through something together with these other people, not by yourself in the room,
Yeah.
but there's a collective experience, a collective gasp. When you first see the shark in Jaws, or I mean, of course, it happens in movies like that. But there's a collective gasp when Liv Ullmann steps on the piece of glass. People gasp. There's a collective gasp when you realize that Christoph Waltz knows that there are people under the floorboards, just suspects it enough to ask the right questions. Those experiences that happen together, you don't get by yourself sitting with your surround, theater. And as much as we think that's just the height of luxury and the height of,
Right.
whatever it is, there's something that the humanness of it can often be lacking. And I think that's also in the longer form television things that are very extended. For me, there's nothing like a movie in which you go in and you're going to be inexorably stuck. You can't turn it off. You can't stop the process of time. You can't stop the process of time. And in that sense, it's like the universe. We can't stop the earth from spinning. We can't stop the earth from orbiting. We'll never be able to do that.
So I'm a horrible person to watch TV or movies with at home because I pause all the time. Why did that person say that? Wait, who's that person?
Sure.
And my wife, she cannot stand it. But I love pausing it. I love discussing it. But in the cinema, it's in the theater, it's a different experience. You have to stay focused.
Yes, you must stay focused, and you must also, you're absolutely right. And you must stay focused, but you must also accept that time goes on and that you can't stop it. And I think that that's one of the things about great films, that not manipulative ones that just kind of play with you for 2 hours and then let you go. You just feel wrung out at the end, but you don't really get any sort of transformation. But a really great film, when you watch it, you feel you've been through something that you feel like you're changed when you come out. And part of that is that you can't stop it. That it is inexorably, even if you know what's going to happen, even if you know that the character is doomed, somehow going through it. I mean, it's the Greek idea of catharsis, right? That we need to experience these things together. The Greeks know perfectly well how the play Medea ends. It's not good. It's not
right.
good.
We know how Titanic ends.
Exactly. We know how Titanic ends. The ship's going to go down, but going through that, there is a catharsis. Part of that experience is and that's why you want to watch the film again and again. You know what's going to happen, yet going through it is something that you crave repeatedly. That's interesting.
It's remarkable that the theaters have survived COVID. Now they've shrunk, and many have closed, but it's just remarkable that there are any at all. And they're suffering, though. Barbenheimer was great for them.
Absolutely. No, I mean, but I think that just goes to show people crave that collective experience. We need that collective experience. We can't do without it. We've got to have it. And I think that will never die. I mean, it goes back to Plato's myth of the cave. I don't know if you read that, but right. So I mean, it's sort of this idea that people are together watching these shadows on the wall, and it's entrancing. We can't get enough of it. So I think that and as in the myth of the cave, the relationship between those shadows on the wall and reality is very interesting. It reminds us that there's a difference between representation and reality. And those two things, and those are things I wanted to play with in Deep Sky, in the sense that here are these images that come back from the telescope that are of these vast cosmic places that we truly can't comprehend. But we're able to get a little feeling of them from these images. And somehow when you get that feeling, it's something that, it tinkles your spine a little bit, and you're just grasping a tiny piece of it, but you feel like you're onto something, and it makes you want to go back again and see them again, or somehow go out under the night sky and realize the way it changes your consciousness, that now we know that every single star in the sky, virtually every star, has at least one planet around it. That's not something we knew 20 years ago. So when I was growing up, the idea that we knew the at that point 9 planets in our solar system. Now there are only 8 because they demoted Pluto. But 8 planets in our solar system. Those were the only planets that we knew existed in the entire universe. People postulated that there must be other planets around stars, but we didn't know. Only through building telescopes like the Kepler Space Telescope, and now JWST, the Hubble Space Telescope, and ground-based telescopes too, we've actually found that there are planets around virtually every star. So when you go out at night, think about that. When you look up at the stars, every one of those stars is another star system. It really makes you sort of feel both our uniqueness, but also that we're not so special, right? So our solar system is like many other solar systems.
If you enjoyed this TOE clipping, then the full video is linked in the description. You should also sign up for TOE Mail, which is again in the description and the pinned comment. You'll receive immediate access to all exclusive updates from the Theories of Everything podcast. It also helps me communicate directly with the core TOE community. You'll also receive my top 10 TOEs. Think of it as the intellectual version of Quentin Tarantino's Obsession.